We're going to start out by looking at the angle negative 1290. Again, the angle is negative, which means that we need to be careful and make sure that our angle is going clockwise if it's negative. So the first thing that we'd start off by doing is going around the circle once, which would put us at negative 360 degrees. But that's not quite enough. We want something much bigger, so we'd have to go around again, which would put us at negative another negative 360 added on, which would put us at negative 270. Then the question is, do we need to go around at least one more time? Yes, we do. So adding on another negative 360 to go around the circle one more time would put us at a negative 1080. Now, if we were to do another 360, that'd be a little bit too much. So the question is, how much more are we going to go? We're at negative 1080. So if we've got negative 1080, let's see. If we subtract another 90 here, to get to this point would be a negative 1170. That's still not quite enough. Then subtracting another 90 on top of that would put us right here, would put us at negative 1260. So almost. So right here we're at negative 1260. We're just going to 90s now because we're getting closer. So negative 1290 is a little bit more than that, 30 more than that in the negative direction, which now puts us at negative 1290. So here we are. We end up in quadrant 2. Okay, well now we're going to make our right triangle with this angle here in quadrant 2. But that means I need to know the angle here that's inside. Well, we know that this full angle was 1290, but we know that stopping just at the x-axis here was negative 1260. So the distance between this angle and the x-axis, well, our angle where we ended was a negative 1290. The x-axis was at the negative 1260, so the angle in between should be a 30 degrees. Now, it's getting confusing because we've got a lot going on over here, so let's redraw our triangle somewhere else. So I'm going to draw it off to the side over here. Make sure that we know that we're in quadrant 2 here. And we said that the angle inside here was 30 degrees. Okay, now what? Well, remembering that we are in quadrant 2 reminds us that x values are negative in quadrant 2 because we're going to the left here. So whatever value this base ends up being is going to be negative. The y's, however, going up on the other side will be positive, and the hypotenuse will be positive. We just need to figure out what this is. Well, we've got 30 as one angle. That means the other angle has to be 60, because then we're looking at a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. Well, remember the longest side in a 30, 60, 90 triangle is the hypotenuse, which is always of length 2. The second largest side is opposite. The 60 degree angle is going to be a square root of 3. Notice it's a negative because it's going to the left. And last side should be the side opposite the 30 degree angle, which should be the smallest, which should be a side of length 1. Okay, perfect. So we've got our correct right triangle. In quadrant 2 over here, we have the negative where it should be. Now we should be able to find sine, cosine, tangent, and then we'll work on finding secant, cosecant, and cotangent. So let's start out with secant first, which is the SOH and SOHCAHTOA. So sine of, and we're using the 30 degree angle as a representative for our negative 1260, and it should be opposite. Well, opposite of the 30 degree angle is the side 1 over hypotenuse which is the longest side, the orange side here, which is side 2, which has a length of 2. So sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. What that also means is, continuing along, that cosecant, which is its reciprocal, should then be it flipped upside down, which would be 2/1, which is just 2. Okay, continuing along, let's look at cosine of 30 degrees. And remember, cosine is SOHCAHTOA. So let's see, with cosine, that means that we're looking at adjacent now, which is that negative square root of 3. Do not forget the negative. Negative square root of 3. Over the next side is the ka ends in h, which is the hypotenuse, which was of side of 2. So that means cosine is going to be what we just got, negative square root of 3/2. Question, what does that mean about its reciprocal? Secant should be the reversed. It flipped upside down, which would be negative 2 square roots of 3. Negative 2 over, the square root of 3. And then the problem with that is that we cannot leave the square root on the denominator. So I need to multiply the top and the bottom by another square root of 3 to see what happens, which on top will give me negative 2 square roots of 3 all over. On the bottom, the 2 square roots of 3 cancel out the square roots, but you still have the 3. So for secant, we end up with negative 2 square roots of 3/3. Okay, last trig function is tangent, which is our TOA. So we've got now tangent of our 30-degree angle, which is the TOA, which is opposite, which we've already said. The opposite side is side of length 1, over the adjacent side next, which was the negative square root of 3. Again, just like a second ago, we cannot leave a square root on the denominator. So what do we do to get rid of the square root in the denominator? We're going to multiply the top and the bottom by a square root of 3 to get rid of that out of the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Multiply the top and the bottom by a square root of 3, which will on top give me just a square root of 3. And on the bottom, we've got a square root of 3 times square root of 3, which is just going to be 3. And as a warning, be careful, we had a negative sign. That doesn't go anywhere, so it means our answer is going to be a negative square root of 3/3. So let's go ahead and plug that in as our tangent. It'd be negative square root of 3/3. The question is, what is cotangent going to look like? Well, the easiest way to figure out what cotangent is going to be like is to look at your original, which was 1 over negative square root of 3. Because when you flip that upside down and take its reciprocal, it becomes negative square root of 3/1. And that's okay because the square root is on the top. 1 goes into square root of 3 as negative square root of 3. The negative's still there. That's not going to go anywhere. So make sure that you don't lose your negative. So our answer for cotangent is negative square root of 3. And that's it. So those are our 6 trigonometric function values for this angle of negative 1290. What did we use instead of negative 1290? We actually used the 30-degree reference angle to create a triangle and fill in the values and realize that we were in the second quadrant, which is why we got negative cosine and negative secant and negative tangent and negative cotangent. This kind of trick of drawing our triangles in various quadrants is going to happen throughout this entire course. So please make sure you take the time to feel comfortable with doing this because it's going to keep popping up over and over and over again. These next few